Number 5. Carlsbad. In August of 2022, a group of people reported an inexplicable glowing object illuminating the sky above them. They claimed to see red dots appearing, disappearing, and reappearing in the formation of a line. The group quickly took out their phones and began recording, then noticing a second and third formation of the same dotted lines. In response to the public questioning of this sighting, the National Air Force released a statement claiming that this was simply part of their training and that there was no cause for concern. They said that the dots were training operations from the Hollow Man Air Force Base, in which the pilots and planes were using flares. Many citizens questioned the legitimacy of the Air Force's response, stating that the lights simply do not look like flares, they look electronic. The National UFO Center released a quote that got people thinking. The greatest scientific question of our time is, are we alone? From this vantage point, it doesn't look like we are. People that are skeptical of the Air Force's honesty bring up an interesting observation. When one person captures a video of an unidentified aerial phenomenon, the Air Force reports it as tampered or photoshopped. But whenever the video is taken by multiple people from multiple angles, the Air Force creates an excuse, citing tests or astral anomalies as the reasoning behind the flying objects. Many find the responses to be odd, wondering why no one is alerted of testing beforehand. The Air Force continues to come up with explanations after the videos are brought to their attention. Is it just as naive to believe in UFOs as it is to blindly believe the organization that has lied to us in the past? Number 4. Roswell. The Roswell incident is generously and fairly credited as a pivoting point for the culture surrounding aerial phenomenons today. In 1947, an object crash-landed on ranch land in Roswell, New Mexico. Mac Brazel and his son were driving across their land when they came across the wreckage. Brazel described the scene as a large area of bright wreckage made up of rubber strips, tinfoil, and rather tough paper and sticks. Perplexed by the strange assortment of items that had randomly appeared, Brazel decided to take the items into the police. The object that crashed had several crash sites. Others who claim to have seen the object crash land in different locations say that they saw small humanoid creatures leaving the ship, seemingly running away from the wreckage. About a week after the crash, Brazel had been able to collect most of the wreckage, so he drove into Roswell. Brazel brought the items to Sheriff George Wilcox, who ended up being just as confused as Brazel was regarding the origin of the materials. The sheriff decided to contact the commander of Roswell Army's Air Forces. The news worked itself up the chain of command, eventually reaching an intelligence officer named Major Jesse Marcel. Marcel traveled to the crash sites and retrieved the remainder of the wreckage. Then, Marcel provided a public statement for the newspapers. The intelligence office of the 509th Bombardment Group at Roswell Army Airfield announced at noon today that the field has come into the possession of a flying saucer. Pilot Kenneth Arnold also confirmed the existence of the saucer, claiming that he too had seen a flying object. Only days later, the news ran rampant with flying saucer headlines. The Air Force released a statement claiming that the object was merely a weather balloon, but in 1978, Marcel revealed that the claim of it being a weather balloon was a hoax meant to distract the public. He speculated that the debris' origin was not of this world. Public speculation exploded with hundreds of theories as to what was found that day, and to this day, the Air Force continues to deny that the debris was extraterrestrial. New theories regarding the Roswell incident continue to be talked about, making it one of, if not the most popular UFO sighting to date. Number 3. Pilot sightings. On Sunday, February 21st, 2021, Steve Douglas, a blogger armed with a radio, accidentally intercepted a transmission from an airplane flying over New Mexico, and he heard a startling interaction take place. The first pilot said, "Do you have any targets up here? We just had something go right over the top of us," which was followed shortly by a description from the pilot. "I hate to say this, but it looked like a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile type thing, moving really fast right over the top of us." Douglas was able to use 2 flight tracking apps to pinpoint the exact position of the plane as the signal was intercepted. Douglas said that it was over the northeast corner of New Mexico, west of Clayton, New Mexico. The plane was at an altitude of 37,000 feet. New Mexico is very well known for its connection to the extraterrestrial, making the sighting of an unidentified object far more likely and suspicious. In response to the blogger's post, the FAA released a statement confirming that the audio was real, but that their radars did not pick up any unknown flying objects over the area. Pilots sighting strange flying objects supposedly happens fairly regularly, and there are many similar cases of pilots seeing objects flying over them or in the distance. But then, the command tower claims that there's no sign of anything on the radar. The Air Force has been extremely secretive in the past, adamantly denying the accusation that they're aware of an extraterrestrial life force. But in recent years, they've been denying less and avoiding more. Do you think it's because they can no longer hide it? Or possibly, extraterrestrial life isn't as harmful as we once believed? Number 2, the Lon Zamora Incident. In the spring of 1964, Lon Zamora claims to have seen 2 people standing beside a large, shiny object that later launched into the air with a roaring burst of fire. Lonnie gained a significant amount of attention from the media, UFO organization and investigators, and the Air Force. Lon Zamora found himself in an open field after seeing what he'd assumed to be a motor crash from the distance. Zamora continued pursuing the crash until he saw a blaze of fire. Zamora then assumed that an explosion had occurred, so he decided to investigate the incident from a distance. It was then that Lonnie noticed a white shiny object, originally assumed to be an overturned white car. He described the object being oval and likened the material to aluminum. Many theories have been provided in an attempt to explain what Lonnie saw that night. Some said it was merely a mirage of the star Canopus. Others suggested that it was a lunar landing test by humans, not aliens. The president of New Mexico Tech claimed that it was just a prank put on by some of the students, saying it was just a balloon and a candle, not high-tech alien equipment. In 1966, the county's commerce president decided to make the location more accessible to tourists. They installed walkways and signage, hoping to attract alien enthusiasts from all over the country. But the tourist destination is actually not placed at the exact site. In fact, it's about a quarter-mile away. Locals claim the decision to move the pathways was simply due to radioactivity on the original site. Number 1, the Dolce Base. Are aliens and humans working together? In Dolce, New Mexico, this might be a reality. Many people believe that there's a secret underground base where extraterrestrial beings and humans work together, working on projects and researching what lies beyond the stars, and what's on our planet. The theory was created in 1979 when Paul Benowitz became convinced that he was intercepting signals from alien spacecrafts. Within the same year, he had also become convinced that he had discovered a secret government underground base where gray aliens worked alongside humans. Benowitz's story spread quickly and became highly popular in the UFO conspiracy community, with members of UFO groups even confirming the existence of the base. News outlets began adding fuel to the raging fire, claiming that an author had confirmed the existence of the base and that the aliens built the base so that they could test on humans. A political scientist named Michael Barkin added that there are in fact underground missile installations, which gives the slightest amount of plausibility to the idea of an alien base. This stirred up even more interest in the theory among UFO conspiracists. However, absurd claims of wild fights and abductions of humans led many to believe that the base is nothing more than a conspiracy. The evidence supporting the base existing is circumstantial, but the evidence against it is as well. Whether a secret collaborative project between aliens and humans is happening or not, there's definitely something strange lurking underground at the Dolce Base.
Number 5. Alright, the 2019 Jackson spotting. Folks, we are starting today off with the usual disclaimer that if the footage or photos that I'm talking about don't appear, it's because they've disappeared from the interwebs between when I did my research and when this hits the World Wide Web. Which honestly, in my personal opinion, leads me to believe we're on the right track to the point where the Men in Black are watching, or I just have the worst luck. 50-50. So in August of 2019, an intriguing video surfaced on the internet raising questions that NASA can't easily dismiss. The footage sent to Buckrail website by an anonymous reader shows a mysterious flying object over Jackson Hole, which is located in Wyoming, by the way. I thought it was in Florida. This unidentified phenomenon occurred during the Perseid meteor shower, but it exhibited peculiar characteristics that challenged conventional explanations. The anonymous observer, working a night shift, initially thought it might be a meteor, but it moved way too slow and seemingly too close close to the ground for that. So after checking flight records, no aircrafts were reported in that airspace at that time. And what truly baffled the observer was a sudden brilliant flash at the end of the object's trajectory, illuminating the sky. Such an occurrence defied conventional wisdom, leading to the tongue-in-cheek speculation of aliens in their sleep-deprived state. Hey, after analyzing the video frame by frame, experts ruled out meteors due to the object's brightness and slow movement, which lacked the characteristic streak of meteors. Some suggested it could be a drone, as drone regulations require visible lights, but the unknown flash remains unexplained. Michael Brotherton, a professor of astronomy, noted that the flash might not appear as bright in reality, considering the sensitivity of webcams to low light. A former Air Force pilot proposed the theory of a single-ship fighter jet, possibly performing maneuvers with afterburners and flares. However, the absence of military training airspace in the area and the unusual time for a solo jet flight raises many doubts. In conclusion, the mystery persists, with the leading explanations being a drone or a lone fighter jet. But the peculiar flash remains unaccounted for, leaving us with our unanswered questions. Was it actually a drone pilot's curiosity, a pilot showboating, or UFOs? This footage continues to baffle experts, and yeah, it raises a lot of questions. So let me know in the comments what you think, because my brain is confounded. Number 4, the Varinha Incident. The Brazil's Roswell incident, known as we're gonna call it the V case, has resurfaced, igniting intrigue and sparking rumors of potential creature footage. Back in 1996, so the year before I was born, this incident garnered global attention, featuring a UFO crash, an alleged extraterrestrial encounter, and a subsequent military cover-up, despite official government denials. This enigma remains one of Brazil's most famous UFO cases, drawing UFO tourism to the city of V. Witnesses recounted a bizarre event in that January, when a strange, cigar-shaped object crashed in, the city of V. Locals observed its gradual descent, describing it as resembling a struggling washing machine. The incident was followed by the arrival of military personnel who cordoned off the area. Now, subsequently, a group of girls claimed to have encountered a strange creature with brown, oily skin, V-shaped feet, a large head, and huge red eyes. The Brazilian military later attributed this creature to a homeless man covered in mud, but the witnesses vehemently disagreed. They recalled the creature's fearful expression and alien characteristics, leading them to believe it was not a human or an animal. The mystery deepened when 2 military police officers reportedly captured the creature, only for one of them to suffer a fatal infection shortly afterwards. Now, the recent documentary Moment of Contact has reignited interest in the case, featuring interviews with witnesses and an anonymous whistleblower known as Military X. This whistleblower claimed to have been involved in transporting the creature's body to the ESA Army base. His description of the creature's oily skin and V-shaped foot only added to the mystery and credibility. Additionally, a former Brazilian Air Force traffic controller alleged that the US Air Force landed unannounced and dispatched helicopters to collect something in the city of V. The documentary concludes with the filmmakers pursuing video and photographic evidence, suggesting that such evidence exists somewhere in Brazil. Now, this incident occurred in a climate of increased UFO attention, both in Brazil and internationally. But with witnesses and whistleblowers sharing their accounts and claims of photographic evidence, the mystery of Brazil's Roswell remains a captivating enigma, challenging official explanations and leaving room for speculation and, yeah. Hey NASA, any comment on this cover-up? I'm not expecting it, but it'd be nice. Number 3, Japanese-British crossover event. I swear, I know that sounds like something out of an anime, but I promise you it's very, very real. The 2011 British government release of 8,500 pages of secret UFO reports, 8,500, rekindled interest in UFO sightings and their possible connection to world crises. The reports point to a curious pattern of increased UFO sightings during times of significant events, such as natural disasters or wartime. In the aftermath of the devastating 8.9 magnitude earthquake in Japan, y'all remember that one, there had actually been numerous UFO sightings reported over the country, with video footage showing bright lights in the sky and UFOs skimming over the Pacific near the quake zones. One notable incident involved a rare air defense video from Japan showing a UFO flying near the nuclear-powered aircraft carrier USS Ronald Reagan as it arrived off Japan's coast to assist with disaster response. These sightings have sparked discussions and speculations about the connection between UFOs and global events. The British UFO files also reference American UFO researcher Dr. Joseph Allen Hynek, who served as a consultant to the American Defense Department for about 15 years. The files suggest that Hynek's studies on world disasters and their relation to increased UFO sightings were influential in the UFO community. This correlation between significant events and UFO sightings raises some questions. I know I have plenty. The release of these files has shed light on the government's long-standing secrecy regarding UFO information, with accusations that people who reported UFO sightings were often ridiculed or dismissed. Furthermore, and hold on to your butts folks, it has been revealed that discussions about UFO phenomenon took place at the highest levels of government worldwide. Like in 1979, the House of Lords held the first full debate among lawmakers on the subject, acknowledging thousands of credible UFO sightings reported by British police, government officials, and members of the Royal Air Force. The role of the House of Lords in keeping these UFO findings secret for over 60 years has raised many questions about the transparency of government institutions. You don't say. Additionally, the British media has criticized the Ministry of Defense for labeling people who reported UFOs as nutters, while the House of Lords and even the Queen of England had knowledge of the secret UFO files. Yeah, you heard me correctly. The Queen knew about this and was just like, nah. Interestingly, the UFO files also mention the detection of 15 UFOs on radar approaching the United Kingdom on the day of September 11th. Yeah, of 2001. Remember that? Adding another layer of mystery to this phenomenon. These revelations from the British government's release of the files have ignited some discussions worldwide about the intersection of UFO sightings, major world events, and government secrecy, prompting further questions. I know I have plenty. Number 2, Gulf Breeze footage. So the Gulf Breeze UFO incident, a series of claimed UFO sightings in Gulf Breeze, Florida during 1987 to 1988 remains a puzzling chapter in the history of UFOlogy. Or is it ufology? Please let me know in the comments. At the heart of this curious tale is Ed Walters, a local contractor who reported numerous UFO encounters and provided photographs as evidence. This case drew significant attention from UFO researchers, skeptics, and the general public. In November of 1987, Ed captured attention by supplying photos of alleged UFO sightings to the Gulf Breeze Sentinel newspaper. These images, published under aliases to protect Walter's identity, showed a mysterious craft in the skies above Gulf Breeze. Now, some experts, like Bruce Maccabee, believed the photographs to be genuine. Walter's own accounts of his experiences are intriguing, yet highly controversial. He reported being immobilized by a blue beam and took Polaroid photos of the UFO hovering above his home. He claimed to have encountered the craft multiple times and even reported seeing land and aliens stepping out. He said the aliens communicated with him telepathically and presented him with a book of dog pictures, and then a blue beam of light lifted him off the ground. Hey, sounds pretty straightforward to me. These extraordinary claims were supported by some, including a polygraph test that indicated Walters believed his photos were real. UFO researcher Bud Hopkins also interviewed Walters and believed in his authenticity, citing the fact that Walters turned down a significant book deal and once again passed a polygraph test. Granted, there were some strong skeptics. Ray Stanford, a paranormal investigator, focused on the background of the photos and was convinced they were hoaxes. In addition, another UFO investigator, Philip Klass, thought the photos were inauthentic and not impressive to the public. And yes, somebody from NASA also raised some questions about the double exposure. We all know about that though. It's pretty easy to fake that. I don't think these were faked. Even within Gulf Breeze, the Gulf Breeze Sentinel's publication of the photos did lead to numerous reported sightings in the area. Locals described various UFO phenomena, including some glowing stuff, beams of light, and a craft. The Gulf Breeze case had become a significant topic of discussion in the UFO community at the time. Once again, it's going to remain shrouded in mystery and controversy. Ed's claims and the accompanying photographs kind of divided some opinions. I'm on team that it's compelling evidence. It's real. Number 1, the Arctic UAP. So the recent surge in reports of unidentified flying objects, or now known as UAPs, has brought the question of extraterrestrial life into the forefront of public consciousness once again. A recent incident involving a Chinese spy balloon over the US and subsequent unexplained aerial phenomena kind of raises some concerns and questions about what on earth is happening in our skies. So let's go back to February of this year when there was an incident that marked a series of mysterious aerial events. Let's go back to February of this year when there was a series of mysterious aerial events, which captured our attention. It all began with the massive Chinese surveillance balloon that meandered across North America. This intrusion into US airspace prompted the use of military force to bring it down, leaving many Americans in disbelief that such an event could occur. What followed were three more perplexing incidents involving unknown objects. US fighters took down these objects over various locations, including Alaska, the Yukon here in Canada, and Michigan's Lake Huron. The fact that authorities admitted to having no idea about the origin or ownership of these objects deepens the mystery. However, it's the revelation of a fifth undisclosed incident over the Arctic Circle on February 1st that truly raises some eyebrows. The involvement of 8 or 9 UAPs detected over the Arctic led to the deployment of fighter jets in an attempt to intercept them. Now, these objects exhibited high-speed maneuvering, eluding the pursuit of military aircraft. Former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense Christopher Mellon corroborated this account. It's a clear indication of a larger issue: the lack of transparency and information from the Air Force regarding UAPs. Popular outlet News Nation reached out to both the Pentagon and NORAD, but the responses didn't provide satisfactory answers. NORAD denied allegations of scrambling fighter jets to intercept UAPs, attributing aircraft presence in the area to a training operation. Also, there's an unsettling silence surrounding the Alaska object come down on February 10th. Despite the White House's assurances that debris recovery efforts would be made, none of that was happening. So are these advanced technologies, espionage activities, or something beyond our current understanding? Now come on, I can't be the only one getting a bad case of deja vu with this one. This is almost textbook with what the government did to cover up the Roswell case for years. Number 5, the abduction of Betty and Barney Hill. Yes, I know I said I'd be talking about UFO sightings today, but this event is a combination sighting and abduction that I just couldn't leave off the list. So the Hills were a married couple that lived in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Barney was employed by the United States Postal Service, while Betty was a social worker, so pretty normal folks. They were very active in their local Unitarian congregation, members of the NAACP, and Barney sat on a local board of the United States Commission on Civil Rights, so they seem like pretty normal folks. The UFO sighting happened at around 10:30 p.m. on September 19th of 1961. The Hills were driving back to their home in Portsmouth from a vacation in Niagara Falls and Montreal. Just south of Lancaster, Betty noticed a bright point of light in the sky that moved from below the moon in the planet Jupiter, upwards towards the west of the moon. Now, while Barney was driving, Betty reasoned that she was observing a falling star, but it was moving up. So because it moved erratically and was growing bigger and brighter, Betty convinced Barney to stop the car for a closer look, as well as to walk their dog, Dulcie. Barney obliged and stopped at a picnic area just south of Twin Mountain. Now by this point, Betty had dug out her binoculars for a closer look, described seeing an odd-shaped aircraft flashing multicolored lights travel across the face of the moon, believing it to be a flying saucer based off of stories she had heard from her sister. Taking his turn with the binoculars, Barney thought it was just a commercial plane at first, but soon changed his mind because without looking as if it had turned, the craft rapidly descended in his direction, causing him to realize something was wrong. The Hills said they continued driving on the isolated road, moving very slowly through Franconia Notch in order to observe the object as it came even closer. At one point, the object passed above a restaurant and signal tower on top of Cannon Mountain and came out near the old man of the mountain. Betty testified that it was at least 1.5 times the length of a granite cliff profile. Which was around 40 feet long, and that it seemed to be rotating. At one point, the object descended rapidly towards their vehicle, causing Barney to stop in the middle of the highway. The huge silent craft hovered about 80 to 100 feet above the Hills' 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air and filled the entire field of view in the windshield. Carrying his pistol in his pocket, Barry stepped away from the vehicle and moved closer to the object, which he later said was roughly the size of a huge pancake. And that statement right there just made me a little hungry. I love pancakes. Still using the binoculars, Barney claimed to have seen 8 to 11 humanoid figures peering out of the craft's windows, seeming to look at him. In his report to investigator Walter Webb of the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, NICAP for short, Barney described specifically that the beings were somehow not human. In unison, all but one figure moved to what appeared to be a panel on the rear wall of the hallway that encircled the front portion of the craft. The one remaining figure continued to look at Barney and communicated a message telling him to stay where you are and keep looking. Barney had a recollection of observing the humanoid uniforms and black caps. Red lights on what appeared to be bat wing fins began to telescope out of the sides of the craft, and a long structure descended from the bottom of the craft. The silent aircraft approached what Barney estimated was within 50 to 80 feet overhead and around 300 feet away from him. Not arriving home until dawn, the Hills stated that they had some odd sensations and impulses they couldn't explain. Now, extremely confused, the Hills said they tried to reconstruct what exactly happened, because notice I just sort of fragmented there, but their memories were also incomplete and fragmented. Now, the rest of the night, the Hills have no idea. They didn't arrive home until after dawn, and they had some odd sensations and impulses they couldn't explain. And they're very extremely confused, and they tried to reconstruct what happened, but their memories were... After sleeping for a couple of hours, Betty awoke and placed the shoes and clothing that she had worn during the drive into her closet, observing that the dress was torn at the hem, the zipper, and the lining, and later noticed a pinkish powder on the dress. Now, over the years, 5 different laboratories have conducted chemical and forensic analyses, and they got nothing. Now, this wasn't the only damage to items in their possession. Barney said that the leather strap for the binoculars was torn, but couldn't remember how. The toes of his shoes were scraped, their watches were broken, and no matter what, they never worked again. There were shiny concentric circles, similar to the rings one would find on a tree trunk, on the car's trunk that had not been there the previous day. Now, Betty and Barney experimented with a compass. Noticed that when they moved it towards the spots, the needles would whirl rapidly, but when they moved it a few inches away from the shiny spots, it would drop down. 10 days after the UFO encounter, Betty began having a series of vivid dreams, which continued for 5 successive nights. She stated that she experienced them with a degree of detail and intensity that she had never had before. After the 5th night, they stopped and never recurred, though they occupied her thoughts during the day. Determined to recover their lost memories, the Hills opted to partake in hypnosis sessions. Barney recalled driving the car away from the UFO, but afterwards he felt compelled to pull it off the road and drive into the woods, eventually spotting 6 men standing on the dirt road. The car stalled and 3 of the men approached the car, telling Barney not to fear them. Okay. He was still anxious. no kidding, and reported that the leader told him to close his eyes. While hypnotized, Barney said, "I felt like the eyes had been pushed into my eyes," a statement he would repeat each session. The best anyone has been able to rebut what happened was claiming stress and sleep deprivation as the cause of what they saw and experienced. I'll admit, I'm usually much more of a skeptic, but this seems pretty dang real to me. Number 4, an Alabama spotting. This tale comes from a lovely lady named Lana and took place in Bose, Alabama back in July of 2014. It was around 10:30 at night. Lana and her friend were sitting on her friend's deck, enjoying a late night beverage of the non-alcoholic kind. And her friend exclaimed, "Look!" And Lana looked up in time to see a rectangular shaped object with lights circling around it, constantly changing colors. The duo found themselves repeating, "What is that?" in reference to, the obvious UFO. It briefly went dark and then reappeared, moving towards the property. Now, this house is situated at an elevation of 1,053 feet above sea level and features a very steep drop-off at the edge of the lawn, which is heavily wooded all the way down the mountain. The UFO was hovering just above the very tall trees, and as it moved closer and closer to the friends, a small semicircular shaped object was seen below the larger object. Lana grabbed her cell phone and began taking photos of what they were seeing. It came close enough to the lawn to reflect light onto the grass before straightening itself out and flying at a speed Lana had never seen anything move at, and completely out of sight behind the trees. The large object began getting very bright, with almost fiery looking lights shooting out of the ring where the multicolored lights were first observed. They watched it for what seemed like a short period of time, but later realized they'd been out there watching for about an hour and a half. Lana has no direct memory of the object leaving or blinking out, just being gone, and began to take photos all around in hopes of finding where it went, being able to take a poor photo of what seemed to be two little creatures that we have. In addition to the UFOs, another glowing light appeared deep down in the woods. It would brighten when Lana talked to it, and then dim and brighten again on request. Her camera never recorded a photo of this object, although she's adamant that she snapped them repeatedly. Which I get, phone cameras are a little bit flighty at times. Lana's friend said once while watching the object she was going to get a flashlight and go out there and look more closely, but refrained from doing so when Lana advised otherwise after getting weird vibes from the unknown, which thank goodness they refrained. Who knows what could have happened. Number 3, an insectoid race? This story comes courtesy of a man named Rob Holstein and took place somewhere outside of the USA for once. Zigai, Cyprus. I tried my best. It's another recent account, having happened on April 20th of 2016 at around 8:30 at night. Rob and 2 of his friends had just finished their meal and were out in the garden talking, and after a moment of silence, a friend pointed out an unusually bright star moving across the sky, assuming it may have been like a comet or something. After a brief moment, Rob looked up to realize that it was stationary at around 75 to 100 feet above the tree line, and sat there, staring at whatever this was in complete shock. Every 15 seconds or so, it would lower its altitude until it was only a couple of feet from the treetops, and weirdly, absolutely no noise had been emitted from the UFO, which kind of par for the course. Rob tried getting out of his chair to scurry inside, but felt an overwhelming feeling of paralysis. Ditto for his friend. He turned to her to ask her what was going on, but she looked frozen in fear. After what felt like hours, something appeared from around the trees underneath the triangular craft. It was a humanoid figure, with a head similar to that of an ant and skin like a crocodile. It had extremely small eyes in proportion to its head, and long, thin appendages, walking right up to the fence before sharply turning and sprinting into the darkness of the trees. After a brief moment of complete fear, dread, and anxiousness, the craft moved in a linear path towards the west, before becoming no longer visible, and the feeling of paralysis slowly faded away from the friends. Thank goodness. Number 2, aliens just wanna have fun. Time to travel back in time to August of 1994 in Lac du Flambeau, Wisconsin. Now this story was reported anonymously, so I'll call our editor Edward for funsies. It was a summer night. He was driving around with his buddies for fun when they came up to a stop sign and noticed that there were what they thought to be young folks playing on the swing sets at the grade school, but when they pulled up to the playground, everyone had disappeared. Edward pulled up into the Horseshoe Drive all the way, and that's when they saw what he described as the outline of a white UFO with 2 white lights at the end of each wingtip, hovering above the tree line. Everyone in the car started to scream and holler, like, go, 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 go. And then the third light lit up in a bright orange color, almost like an eye pupil dilating. Edward floored the gas pedal and raced away. And by that point, everyone in the vehicle was in some state of hysterics. The group went to a friend's house, and the friend whose house it was, told her dad about it. He grabbed a flashlight and the group was going back. The dad even went to the woods but found nothing. Before returning home, and the friend group ventured to a local pizza place, told other friends about it, and drew pictures of what they saw to compare, and what do you know? They drew the same thing. Later that night, when the pizza place was closing, Edward ventured outside to start the car, but it was making a horrible noise, similar to if one were turning the ignition when the car was already running. His friend's brother opened the hood and unhooked the battery, and Edward decided to leave the car at the pizza place and walk home in fear. Over the next few days, he had heard that there were other sightings within a few mile radius, all taking place near water, which supports my theory about alien ships needing water to control their crafts. Number 1. Salem isn't just for witches. Captured on the morning of August 3rd of 1952, this creepy photo appears to show 4 unidentified flying objects hovering across the skies of Salem, Massachusetts. We know that the photographer's name was Shell Alpert, and that it was taken at Salem's Coast Guard Air Station, and that the objects were spotted above the Winter Island and Cat Cove areas, but little else is known about this bizarre image. Some have claimed that the lights are simply reflections in the window through which it was taken. Others point to incidents throughout the 1950s in which supposedly similar crafts were seen. It's pretty par for the course that information is missing and unknown in this case, since that's what the government enjoys doing when it comes to credible alien and UFO spottings, in attempts to cover them up, but I know otherwise. And that brings us to the end of our time, and suddenly I don't miss seeing stars in the sky as much as I used to, now that my brain is racing about what ifs.
At number 5, Foo Fighters. And no, I don't mean the amazing band led by Dave Grohl, I mean the UFO event witnessed in the early 1940s during World War II. The term Foo Fighters may sound somewhat whimsical and even comical today, but during World War II, it was associated with mysterious and often eerie encounters in the skies. Allied fighter pilots in both the European and Pacific theaters of operations reported seeing unidentified flying objects or strange aerial phenomena that came to be known as Foo Fighters. These encounters were initially perceived as potential enemy secret weapons. The phenomenon known as Foo Fighters was first formally reported in November 1944 by the US 415th Night Fighter Squadron. The term Foo itself has a rather curious origin, stemming from a comic strip called Smokey Stover by cartoonist Bill Holman. In a mission debriefing in late 1944, a radar operator named Donald J. Myers, who had been an avid reader of Smokey Stover, used the term Foo Fighters to describe a red ball of fire that chased an aircraft through high-speed maneuvers. The name stuck, albeit with slight modification for the sake of decency. The sightings of Foo Fighters were not limited to one specific region or time frame. Royal Air Force personnel had reported similar lights following their aircraft as early as March 1942, while American sightings started becoming more common in October of 1944. Pilots described these objects as fast-moving, round, and glowing, often displaying colors like red, white, or orange. Some likened them to Christmas tree lights and noted that they seemed to playfully dance around their aircraft, making sharp turns before disappearing. Strangely, the objects appeared to be intelligently controlled, but never exhibited hostile behavior, and they couldn't be evaded or shot down. The military took these sightings seriously, suspecting that they might be secret German weapons. However, further investigation revealed that German and Japanese pilots had reported similar phenomena. This led to the theory that the Foo Fighters could be an electrostatic phenomena, electromagnetic phenomena, or simply reflections of light from ice crystals. In December 1944, the Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force in Paris issued a press release describing the Foo Fighters as a new German weapon, which was reported in major newspapers like the New York Times and the British Daily Telegraph. Time magazine also covered the phenomenon in January 1945. The Foo Fighters reported in the Pacific theater of operations were slightly different from those in Europe. They were described as large burning spheres that sometimes hung in the sky but occasionally followed aircraft. Speculation suggested a connection to the Japanese fire balloon campaign, but no aircraft were attacked by these objects. After the war, researchers examined Foo Fighter reports, concluding that they didn't pose a threat and proposing that they were in fact private airline flights. However, with several reports of these lights appearing in and throughout the 1940s, I think we can all agree that these things were UFOs. Number 4. Frederick Valentine. The mysterious disappearance of Frederick Valentine on October 21st, 1978 is a chilling tale that blurs the line between the known and the unknown. Valentine, a young pilot from Australia, was flying a small Cessna 182 aircraft over the Bass Strait, a stretch of water between mainland Australia and Tasmania. What should have been an ordinary training flight turned into one of the most perplexing UFO encounters in aviation history. Valentine radioed Melbourne Air Traffic Control to report an unidentified flying object tailing his aircraft. He described the craft as having 4 bright lights and said it was orbiting his plane. At one point, he claimed the UFO was not an aircraft and was moving erratically. His last transmission was a frantic plea for assistance, reporting that the mysterious craft was hovering above him and seemed to be playing some sort of game. Shortly after this disturbing transmission, all contact with Frederick Valentine and his aircraft was lost. Despite extensive search efforts, neither Valentine nor any wreckage of his plane was ever found, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. One of the perplexing aspects of this case is Valentine's initial description of the UFO as an aircraft with 4 bright lights. This led some to speculate that he might have mistaken the UFO for a conventional airplane. However, as his encounter continued, his descriptions became increasingly bizarre and inconsistent with typical aircraft behavior. Valentine's sense of unease and the fact that he could not identify the craft's origin or purpose only added to the mystery. The Valentine case remains one of the most puzzling disappearances in aviation history, with theories ranging from UFO abduction to more conventional explanations like navigational errors or mental distress. Regardless of the cause, it serves as a reminder of the vast and enigmatic skies above us, where the boundary between the ordinary and the extraordinary can blur in an instant, leaving us with unanswered questions and a sense of unease. Number 3. The Great Los Angeles Air Raid. Also known as the Battle of Los Angeles, which occurred on the night of February 24 to 25, 1942, is one of the most iconic and enigmatic events in the history of UFO sightings. This incident took place just a few months after the United States entered World War II, causing heightened tensions along the West Coast due to the fear of Japanese attacks. In the midst of this atmosphere of uncertainty, an unusual event unfolded that would become known as the Battle of Los Angeles. The event began when radar operators along the California coast detected unidentified objects approaching from the ocean. In response to this perceived threat, air raid sirens wailed, and a citywide blackout was ordered. Anti-aircraft batteries were readied, and searchlights swept the skies in anticipation of an attack. Soon, the unidentified objects reached the Los Angeles area. Witnesses described them as large, glowing, and hovering in the night sky. The anti-aircraft weapons opened fire, and the night was illuminated by a barrage of artillery rounds and searchlights focused on the mysterious objects. For hours, a chaotic scene unfolded as anti-aircraft fire peppered the sky. However, despite the intense barrage, no aircraft wreckage was found, and no enemy planes were shot down. When dawn broke, it became clear that Los Angeles had not been under attack by enemy forces. The initial military response suggested that the unidentified objects were thought to be Japanese aircraft, given the heightened wartime fears. However, the official explanation provided by the US Army was that the incident had been a false alarm caused by jittery nerves and overreaction. They claimed that weather balloons and atmospheric conditions had played a role in creating optical illusions, leading to the mistaken identification of the objects. In the aftermath of the Battle of Los Angeles, skepticism arose regarding the official explanation. Some eyewitnesses insisted that the objects had not resembled weather balloons, but rather large metallic crafts. This fueled speculation that the military was concealing the true nature of the incident. Over the years, the Battle of Los Angeles has remained a subject of debate and speculation within the UFO community. Some believe that the objects were extraterrestrial in origin, while others maintain that they were top-secret military experiments or unconventional aircraft. Despite numerous investigations and official statements, the true nature of the objects remains a mystery, leaving the Battle of Los Angeles as an enduring enigma in the history of UFO encounters. Whether the UFOs were indeed mistaken for airplanes or something far more unusual, the incident continues to captivate the imagination and fuel discussions about the possibility of otherworldly encounters on Earth. Best thing to come out of this whole ordeal was a pretty cool movie of the same name, worth a watch if you're bored. And at number 2, the 1952 Washington, D.C. incident. The 1952 Washington, D.C. UFO incident, most widely documented and perplexing UFO sightings in history. In July of that year, a series of sightings over the nation's capital sparked panic, military responses, and public intrigue. Amidst the Cold War and escalating tensions with the Soviet Union, the events of July 1952 only heightened the sense of unease in the United States. The saga began on July 12th, when radar operators at Washington National Airport, now known as Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport, detected a cluster of unidentified flying objects moving erratically and at high speeds in restricted airspace. The prompted reports were so unusual that they prompted alerts and the scrambling of fighter jets. Over the following night, similar incidents occurred, with multiple eyewitness accounts from both civilians and military personnel. What made the 1952 Washington, D.C. sightings particularly fascinating is that the objects were frequently mistaken for airplanes. They appeared as bright lights, often described as glowing orbs, and were seen darting across the night sky in ways that defied the capabilities of conventional aircraft. Witnesses reported that the objects would suddenly change direction, hover in the sky, and then accelerate rapidly, leaving pilots and air traffic controllers completely baffled. On July 26, 1952, the situation reached its peak when numerous UFOs were once again spotted over Washington, D.C. This time, the incident garnered significant media attention and was witnessed by thousands of people. The objects flew in restricted airspace, causing the immediate suspension of air traffic and the evacuation of the control tower. In response to the public concern and increasing media coverage, the US Air Force held a press conference on July 29th, during which they explained that the sightings were likely caused by temperature inversion, which can cause radar signals to bounce off atmospheric layers and create false returns. They asserted that the visual sightings were likely due to mass hysteria. Yeah, right. However, despite these official explanations, many remain skeptical, and the 1952 Washington, D.C. UFO incident remains a subject of debate among UFO enthusiasts and skeptics alike. Whether the objects were indeed the result of atmospheric phenomena or something more mysterious, the incident left an indelible mark on UFO lore, illustrating how even trained observers could mistake unconventional aerial phenomena for conventional aircraft during a time of heightened Cold War tensions. And at number 1, the Phoenix Lights. The Phoenix Lights phenomenon of March 13, 1997 ranks among the most eerie and chilling UFO sightings in recent history. On that fateful evening, thousands of Arizonans reported witnessing a series of unexplained lights in the night sky, while many observers described the lights as being part of a massive V-shaped craft. The UFOs were thought to be airplanes due to their formation and appearance. The event unfolded after sunset, when numerous residents across Arizona, primarily in the Phoenix metropolitan area, reported seeing a formation of mysterious lights in the sky. These lights appeared to be part of a single, massive object, estimated to be over a mile in length, with witnesses describing it as a V or boomerang shape. The sheer scale and the slow, deliberate movement of the craft perplexed onlookers, leading some to believe that it was not a conventional aircraft or anything they had ever seen before. Many reported that the lights had a soft, amber, or orange glow, and some even claimed to have seen a solid dark mass within the V-shaped formation. Despite the intriguing nature of the sightings, the official explanation offered by the US Air Force was that the Phoenix Lights were caused by military flares, dropped during the training exercises over the nearby Barry M. Goldwater Range. This explanation focused on a separate incident later in the evening, involving a formation of flares. According to the military, these flares illuminated the night sky and created the impression of a single massive object. However, this explanation did not satisfy many witnesses who were convinced that what they had seen earlier in the evening was not flares but a structured craft. Critics argued that flares would not account for the V-shaped formation or the consistent movement of the lights. In retrospect, the Phoenix Lights remain an unsolved mystery, with some believing they were a massive otherworldly craft while others accept the military's explanation. The incident serves as a reminder of how, even in an era of advanced technology and surveillance, UFO sightings can still spark widespread public intrigue and debate, leaving us to ponder the possibility that we may not always accurately identify what we see in the night sky.
Number 5, Camp Wilson. So, we find ourselves in a truly remarkable moment as a new wave of UFO sightings takes center stage this year, and NASA can no longer afford to turn a blind eye to this unexplained phenomenon. Together, let's travel to the California desert, where an event unfolded that eerily echoes the famous 1997 Phoenix Lights incident. Now, if you're a fan of a channel, you've heard me talk about this before. If not, I've done plenty of other videos on it. Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, known for their groundbreaking investigations, brought to light footage from April of 2021, filmed over 29 palms. This sighting is far from your typical blurry UFO footage. The object, described as a giant black triangular shape with lights on its edges, was captured from multiple angles by 6 videos, with the accompanying high-exposure photograph revealing even more detail. Witnesses, including over 50 US Marines, were baffled by the object's sudden appearance, size, and behavior. Like I said before, the incident closely resembles the Phoenix Lights, where a massive triangular UFO was witnessed by thousands. It's important to note that the witnesses in this case aren't your average civilians. They are trained military personnel, artillerymen, and mortarmen who have dealt with illumination rounds in various military aircraft. And their unanimous conclusion? This was unlike anything they had ever encountered. Specifically speaking, a mortarman serving at Camp Wilson during this incident spoke with Corbell and took a high-exposure photo on his smartphone, which revealed the outline of, this object. It appears to be triangular, surrounded by lights spaced evenly around its edge in a V formation. Now, Now, the mortarman, who was staying anonymous for safety reasons, described how one of his companions witnessed the object materialize from nowhere, saying, "One of my buddies was outside. He was looking at the sky and said it just kind of appeared out of nowhere. And we all came out and looked, and then slowly like 50 plus people started coming out and looking. Those lights appeared out of nowhere." Hey, he said it twice. He was adamant. He added that despite their military experience, none of the Marines could recognize the craft, and described their reaction as, you guessed it, baffled. Now, this man who filmed and photographed the object said, "If you look at the picture, you can see a black triangular shape. But the picture I took with the black triangular shape underneath the lights, it's definitely not any type of flare thing or illumination rounds." The witness said the apparent object remained stationary for approximately 10 minutes. But also, like, a Marine can be overheard on one of the videos saying that the triangle might have been in motion. Another Marine who saw it was serving as an artilleryman at the base when he saw the UFO. He firmly rejected any suggestions that the lights could be attributed to illumination rounds that could have been, sent off by artillery or any other mundane explanation he might have recognized, saying this was something none of us had ever seen before. It was a completely different color. The size and the illumination was different. He explained that when they fire off illumination rounds, it's one. You send it in the air and let it drop, and then you send off another one. This was like 5 next to each other, and they're kind of reddish, and our usual illumination rounds are a yellow-white color. The UFO's disappearance, just as illumination rounds were fired over it, adds a layer of mystery. Helicopters and a massive military convoy swiftly converged on the scene, leaving us to ponder what exactly was the government's involvement in all this. The parallels between this and Phoenix lights are undeniable. Both incidents feature large triangular objects with lights hovering over military facilities and then inexplicably vanishing. It's a real head scratcher. And as more details emerge, it's clear that NASA and other space agencies will need to address the growing body of evidence related to these unidentified aerial phenomena, which is something I've been saying for, how many months have I been here again? Number 4, the Go Fast video. So this video, uploaded by the UFO investigative group To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences in March of 2018, was secured by a Freedom of Information Act request to the US government. The video was taken in 2015 off of the East Coast by an FA-18F fighter jet using the aircraft's onboard Raytheon AN/ASQ-228 Advanced Targeting Forward-Looking Infrared Pod, also known as ATF-LIR. I know myself too well, I'm gonna trip over my tongue if I try saying that more than once, so it should be called ATF for short. ATF is designed to allow pilots to track, target, and destroy targets on the ground at ranges of up to 40 miles. Now, it should be noted that ATF is good at spotting, but not engaging aerial targets. The video, nicknamed Go Fast by To the Stars, starts by explaining the various numbers and symbols that appear in the footage. Things like the aircraft's altitude, which was around 25,000 feet, and the fact that the ATF was pointed ahead and to the left of the Super Hornet. The readout also explains that the aircraft was traveling at 252 knots and in a 5-degree turn, and the unknown object was approximately 4.4 nautical miles away. The video shows the Super Hornet's weapons system operator repeatedly trying to acquire the UFO with the ATF's built-in auto tracker, which can, pick out an object and keep it centered on camera. After 2 tries, the weapons system officer, or WSO, shouts, "Whoa, got it!" To which another person, assumed to be the pilot, says, "Woohoo, whoa!" Not to sound like Mario or anything. "What the bleep is that thing?" the pilot asks. The WSO later says, "Oh my gosh, dude." To which the pilot replies, "Whoa. What is that, man?" Now yes, this is where skeptics might start asking, but Alexa, how is this unknown object different from weird government aircrafts we don't know about? Well, doubters, let me count thy ways. For starters, the UFO does not have any kind of hot exhaust trail that would be emitted by a conventional turbine engine, appearing to emit no heat on the ATF sensor. And secondly, the UFO doesn't have any visible wings or fins. Through my research, I've learned that even cruise missiles, such as the American Tomahawk or Russian Caliber, have small winglets that should be visible, and other missiles such as the Maverick anti-tank missile have stubby fins. The UFO appears oval-like and does not appear to fly nose first in the direction of travel. So once again, this was a video hidden and released by the government, so NASA, any comment? Number 3, Las Vegas aliens. Want to go gambling? One sighting this year in Las Vegas shows shadowy figures lurking somewhere in the shot. You can watch the creepy footage, and see if you can spot them. This video is one of many supposed UFO sightings in Vegas just this year, with another sighting around the incident even involving a police officer. But this particular video shows a group of people looking kind of nervous as they look into a backyard behind a house, with the camera zooming in on a forklift truck which has shadowy figures looking inside. Now, there was a fair bit of confusion over where the extraterrestrials are in the video, but many people insist they're there, including me. For example, one comment wrote, "You can see their face, eyes glowing in the first tractor. Then look at the second one, you can see it peeking. They're on like 8 to 10 feet tall." Another wrote, "Face a little left of the center of the circle, you can see the eyes in the mouth." So this video could offer fresh insight into the plethora of encounters and sightings that Vegas has recently seen. Police body cam footage emerged in June showing lights hovering in the sky before plummeting to the ground in a suspected UFO crash landing sighting. Officers carried out an extensive search following reports of the mysterious figures, with no new evidence being uncovered. However, an eyewitness to the suspected crash crash landing spoke out and claimed they witnessed the whole thing, and even stumbled across an extraterrestrial. Apparently, my brother told me to look behind the forklift, and I did. I saw the alien creature. So when I saw it, it was a tall, skinny, lengthy creature, according to this YouTuber. He was a gray-greenish color, and when I looked it in the eyes, my whole body just froze. Bear in mind, I'm looking at his whole body. He has weird-looking feet and a big face and eyes. Yes, there could be numerous theories about the existence of alien life. Many people believe that the universe is simply too big for us to be alone, no matter how unlikely life is to develop. And with that, one theory about why we haven't encountered aliens is that we are being snubbed by the galactic community, either because we're too stupid or too nasty, which fair. Another interesting idea is that intelligent life has evolved several times in the universe. However, the lifespan of an intelligent civilization compared to the universe as a whole is so relatively short that intelligent civilizations might never have coexisted, as one goes extinct before another emerges. Let me know in the comments what your theories are. Number 2, CBP footage. US Customs and Border Protection, so CBP for short, quietly released a slew of records and videos of UFOs in August of this year. Specifically, 12 videos, which were released in response to a Freedom of Information Act request, all of which allegedly contained footage of UFOs. Now, all the footage is available for download and is accompanied by a UFO report titled The Pentagon's UAP Task Force, Mideast Security and Police Studies No. 183. The report is an older document said to be written by Frank Milburn and had something to do with the Begin Sadat Center for Strategic Studies at the Bar Ilan University. It's unclear precisely what the report has to do with the videos, which are pretty stunning on their own. One of the videos clearly shows an orb flying in close proximity to a plane, to the point where it appears the orb is chasing the plane through the sky. It's clear the object isn't moving like any other craft known to man. Most of the footage appears to show some type of orb following an aircraft or flying over land, and in one particular video, we can see one of these super fast objects glide over what appears to be some type of urban development or military base. So what are these orbs? We have no idea. They've shown up consistently around army installations and seem particularly fascinated with military activity. But other than that, we're still none the wiser as to what the heck is going on in our skies. The videos, some of which leaked already a few years back, have added fuel to the already raging fire of public discourse around flying saucers. One video in particular from 2013 shows an unidentifiable spot flying over an airport. The video is black and white and the footage is a little grainy, and the object, whatever it is, cruises over the airport at what appears to be a consistent rate, on a path taking it towards the ocean. It doesn't look at all that unusual. Like if you had already told me it was a bird or a small, UAP, I'd believe it. But the trouble starts when it gets near the water and appears to change shape. Shortly thereafter, the object seems to disappear, reappear, and then vanish for good. Some folks have interpreted that as the object having dipped beneath the water and emerged again, seemingly without losing any speed, which would be an impressive engineering achievement. But the video is so poor, it could just as easily be a digital artifact. Look, we've filled the space around us with a growing number of cameras and orbiting satellites, and they're recording all the time. More than that, we as humans are creating more technology, some of which isn't public knowledge. It was probably inevitable that we would start to catch things on camera that we can't explain. But there's a pretty big gap between, look at that weird thing, and I bet it came from across the stars. Still, there's some weird stuff going on in the sky, and hey NASA, we should probably devote some resources to figuring out what it is. With that in mind though, apparently Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Senator Mike Rounds introduced an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act, which would establish a structure for how and when UAP documents would be released to the public. So for example, for decades, many Americans have been fascinated by, what the heck's out there, and it's long past time they got some answers. The Americans, Canadians, everybody has a right to learn about technologies of unknown origins, non-human intelligence, and unexplainable phenomena. So apparently we're not only working to declassify what the government has previously learned about these, phenomena, but also to create a pipeline for future research to be made public. The bill requires that the government agencies turn over any UAP information they possess within 300 days of the act going into effect. All of which is to say we're at least like a year and a half out from seeing the extraterrestrial goods, so I'm gonna keep screaming at NASA if you don't mind. Number 1, George Arteaga footage. So over the last year, if you couldn't tell by today, unexplainable objects have been appearing in the sky, baffling a lot of folks, especially pilots. So some pilots believe that these fast orbiting objects aren't satellites or known military aircraft. Specifically, pilot George Arteaga remembers the event of what he claims was the most frightening experience of his life, where a circular object flew directly in front of his plane and whizzed directly by his window. He and his co-pilot Daniel were flying towards Medellin when they noticed the strange object. Now thankfully our pilot was able to turn his plane around and the unidentified object moved towards them. He also caught the first video of the stationary object. He was able to fly past the object, and he doesn't think it was a balloon because ideally the wind from the plane should have blown it away. The pilot believes that whatever he saw was, once again, not a balloon by any measure, as he was way too high up and it was way too cold for a balloon to float free. Soon after he posted the video on Twitter, it was uploaded by an Instagram handle named The Hood's Finest, and the video went viral and viewers speculated that what he saw was definitely a UFO. The pilot claims the aircraft was traveling at a speed of 300 kilometers an hour, with temperatures falling close to around 5. And in those conditions, mistaking a balloon or a bird for a UFO is very unlikely. Once again, hey NASA, wanna weigh in?
Number 5. Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali is widely known as the greatest boxer and as an American activist. He sadly passed away in 2016. Muhammad reported having several experiences in which he cited extraterrestrial phenomena. He claimed to have seen a massive UFO mothership and that he was watched by extraterrestrials. Timothy Green Beckley wrote a book containing celebrity UFO sightings. Ali was quoted many times within the book, including the quote, "I happened to look up just before dawn, as I often do while running, and there, hovering above us, was this brilliant light hanging as if by an invisible thread. At first I thought it was a beacon projected from a helicopter, but moments later, a similar object passed in front of us." He said that the second UFO had a glowing red trail behind it. He mentioned the flying objects to his trainer, who was nearby. The pair watched the objects appear from behind the skyline and then fly overhead for about 15 minutes. Ali noted that there had actually been other UFO sightings in the area that same night, including a report from a pilot preparing to land at the Newark airport. The chapter of Beckley's book surrounding Ali contains many sightings. Ali claimed to have experienced 16 sightings. Ali believed that UFOs had been watching him for quite some time. He said that in the early morning he could see them in the sky, playing tag. He recalled, "The closest one happened when a cigar-shaped ship hovered briefly over a car I was a passenger in one night, driving north on the New Jersey Turnpike. What a sight that was. We could see the shadow made by the UFO as it passed over the pavement of the road in the light of the full moon." The author and Muhammad Ali met many times. Beckley stated that Ali seemed to enjoy speaking of UFOs, adding that he was a stone-cold believer. There was no question to him about whether they were real or not. Muhammad had seen a UFO at his training camp in the Poconos Mountains. He had seen a light coming down towards the mountains and hovering above the valley. The UFO was shaped like a cigar, but blunt on both ends. He couldn't see any windows, but he was certain that there were beings on board. The next night, the ship returned, and this time his companion was able to catch a glimpse of the ship as well. Muhammad Ali was an amazing, smart, and kind man. His claims of UFO sightings are supported by other witnesses and by his honest, hardworking personality. Number 4, Plutarch. Plutarch was a Greek-turned-Roman historian. According to Plutarch, this sighting would take place in 74 BCE, prior to a planned battle. The army of the Roman Empire was marching on the armor of King of Pontus in the region of Phrygia, in the region of Phrygia, where Turkey now stands. However, the two armies never met due to a large flame descending from the sky in between the two marching sides. The two armies took the fiery blaze as a warning sign and decided not to fight. The armies separated and everyone was spared from a battle. Plutarch wrote of the event, which was allegedly cited by thousands of people, describing the fiery object as a molten silver-colored object that resembled a bottle of wine. Many people have since attempted to theorize the origin of the object. People have theorized that the object was a falling meteorite, or something of that nature. But NASA scientist Richard Stuthers explained why it may not have been a meteorite as part of a 2007 antiquity study. He reasons that the molten silver color doesn't quite line up with what scientists would expect to see during a meteor event. People have also been reminded to take the knowledge that ancient civilizations had about astrological phenomena into account, including a long history of recorded meteorite events. If what the armies had seen that day was a meteor, they would have been able to recognize it as such. But according to Plutarch, they didn't, which leaves the origin of the wine-shaped object a mystery. Plutarch, though a credible historian, has been known to emphasize the moral lessons of history, sometimes at the expense of accuracy. Some believe that the passage written was an allegory, used to relay a message about war, and it was not to be taken literally. But the fact that this phenomenon was witnessed by thousands of soldiers adds to the credibility and mystery behind the event. Number 3, Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great was a king of the ancient Greek kingdom of Macedon. He spent most of his years conducting a military campaign throughout Western Asia and Egypt. In 329 BCE, Alexander the Great led his army in a conquest to conquer the known world. As he and his army were preparing to cross the Indus River, Alexander and all of his troops watched in awe as two great shining silvery shields spitting fire from around the rims emerged from the skies. The two shields allegedly dove at his army until the elephants, horses, and men were too scared to cross the river where the terrifying incident had occurred. The two flying shields disappeared back into the skies with just as much haste as they had appeared with. 7 years later, while Alexander and his army were attacking a Venetian city in the Mediterranean, both his army and the opposing army witnessed two objects materialize in the sky. One of the objects shot a powerful beam of light at a city wall, which crumbled it to dust. The flying objects appeared, and Alexander's army was able to quickly seize the city, thanking the objects for a helpful contribution of the conquering. Many historians discredit the events as false retellings of an egotistical man, but others dispute them, questioning why the events would even be documented as a part of history if it were untrue. The ancient world has dozens of recorded sightings of extraterrestrial phenomena. Number 2. John Lennon. On August 23rd of 1974, while in New York, John Lennon reported sighting a UFO. He claimed to have seen a UFO slowly and silently flying overhead. John had been laying in his bed and decided to head out to the balcony for an evening cigarette. While he was smoking, he looked up at the sky and noticed odd lights flashing. When he turned around, he saw a large circular flying object flying silently, dark in color and adorned with white pulsating lights around the rim and one red light on top. He called for his girlfriend, May Pang, who joined John on the balcony and saw the same object overhead. She began to shout, "It's a UFO!" The object seemed to be about 2 or 3 stories above them and just nearly cleared the building next to them. The saucer moved at a slow pace before turning sideways and floating down the river. Then it hovered above a building before heading to another part of the city. After stopping at a bridge, it flew quickly up to the sky. During this point in his life, many thought that he may be insane. But May Pang reported that he was not crazy and that she witnessed the sighting as well. The sighting was also reported by many other New York citizens at the time. John Lennon references this experience in the song Nobody Told Me, writing, "There's UFOs over New York and I ain't too surprised." Number 1. Titus Livy, or Livy. Titus Livy is regarded as one of the most accomplished historians of ancient times. Though his histories do have some mythical influence, his work, The History of Rome, is credited as one of the leading reasons that people today have such a great understanding of ancient Rome. Livy covered the civilization's history, from its founding in 753 BCE all the way to 9 BCE. Though his work has some strange passages, none are as strange as his recollection of the events that took place throughout the Second Punic War. Livy described many sightings of phantom ships flying over the battles in the skies. The first reported instance was in 218 BCE, in the first year of the war. Livy wrote that phantom ships had been gleaming over the sky in Rome. The next year, he wrote that round shields were seen in the sky, but over the city of Arpi. He recorded another sighting of another UFO in 173 BCE as a great fleet of many ships in the sky, flying overhead near the ancient city of Lenovium. Many have commented on the similarity of the ancient description of flying saucers offered by Livy and the modern-day depictions of flying saucers. Though Livy lived 150 years after the events of the battle, his position as an extremely trusted historian means that his records are widely viewed as accurate and trustworthy. Many people are skeptical about his writings surrounding phantom ships, but his work is regarded as true due to the source of his information. His source was a thoroughly fact-checked and verified archive which was set up during the Roman Republic. A lot of people like to discredit sightings, saying that they're a result of video doctoring or caused by the fast-moving nature of today's media. The fact that sightings have been reported for thousands of years reminds people that extraterrestrial theories are not anything new. They've been around for centuries. Number 5. Project Blue Book. Project Blue Book was the codename for the study of unidentified flying objects, run by the US Air Force from March of 1947 to December 1969. The project was located at the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, USA. It was initially designed by Captain Edward J. Ruffel and was inspired by other projects like it. Blue Book's goals were to determine if UAP were a threat to national security and to analyze UFO-related data. There were thousands of reports that they analyzed, researched, investigated, and documented. But they thought it would be unlikely that studying UFOs would lead to any major scientific breaks. So the US government decided to terminate the project in 1969 for several reasons. Their first reason for the project's termination were that no UAP that had been investigated, reported, or evaluated displayed a threat to national security. Second, there was no UAP discovered that demonstrated a truly unknown or unidentified non-human technological advancement beyond what we already know. And finally, there was no evidence that indicated any of the sightings that were reported as unidentified were extraterrestrial. Over their 22-year run, Project Blue Book received over 12,500 sightings and reports, but none of them were actual unidentified phenomena. I actually have a video on a lot of phenomena that were mistaken for UFOs, so if you want to check that out, click Top 5 Sky Phenomena. It's pretty cool. But back to Project Blue Book. The project received a lot of backlash from the government, who believed that the speculation and theories surrounding UAP should be debunked and not researched. They reasoned that every sighting that had been reported was just people mistaking natural phenomena or military training. The project was taking a lot of money and was not providing any useful information. The financial loss that this project became, mixed with the doubt that UAP even existed, pushed the government to decide that Project Blue Book was unnecessary, so they shut it down. Project Blue Book has since made itself well known within pop culture, being mentioned in TV shows and in UAP enthusiasts. It was one of the most popular US government research projects centered around UAP, so it makes sense that it gained so much traction and popularity. Have you heard about Project Blue Book? Number 4, Project Magnet. Project Magnet was a Canadian study program founded by Transport Canada in December of 1950 and directed by Wilbur Brockhouse Smith. Smith was a senior radio engineer for Transport Canada's broadcast and measurements section. It was government funded and approved until 1954, but the program officially shut down when Smith passed in 1962. Smith's founding theory surrounded extraterrestrial UAP being operated by magnetism, opposed to electricity or any other worldly power source. The project began when Smith requested to use the facilities of the Department of Transportation to study UAP. The project was officially approved and government-backed on the 2nd of December. Smith hoped he would be able to collect data on UAP. The program hoped that the data studied would lead to scientific advancements on practical engineering and technology. Mainly, they believed that the project would provide them insight on geomagnetism and Earth's magnetic field, hoping that this insight would then be applied to vehicles as a source of propulsion. Project Magnet theorized that UAP, if they were real, would hold the technology necessary to make their vision a reality. Only 2 years into the project, Smith made a preemptive statement, theorizing that UAP came from intelligent, non-human sources, and definitely used magnetism for flight. In the same year, the Canadian government established a second UAP research program, again with Smith being the lead director. Smith did end up going a little bit off the goal within a couple of years. He began to share his theories that were far more outlandish than the magnetism manipulation for flight. He believed UAP were linked to psychic phenomena and said that he himself was in telepathic communication with extraterrestrial beings. He wrote a series of articles surrounding the theory, which weren't very well received by his employers, and they weren't even released to the public until 7 years after Smith's passing. When the project was pulled from the government funding in 1954, Smith built an observatory outside of Ottawa on Shirley's Bay to continue studying UAP reports and sightings, still believing that UAP would provide data that could be understood and measured by our technology, and then be implemented, leading to advancements. Though a lot of people challenged his hypothesis that magnetism could be implemented, it is a really interesting theory, so for a second, you have to let me ramble on how it would work. The Earth is essentially one big magnet, and the magnet has different strengths depending on geographical location. Smith assumed that advanced life forms had discovered a way to accurately manipulate these fields and use them as a method of fast-moving travel, which, as far as a lot of non-human tech theories go, it's not too outlandish. Like, think about how fast bullet trains are able to travel just by using physical magnets. If Smith was able to discover the technology that allowed geomagnetic propulsion to be implemented in air travel, it would have been extraordinary. Transportation would never be so incredibly advanced, effective, and far more ecologically responsible. Okay, I'm done with the scientific endeavor. Back to government secrets. Number 3. Institute 22. Institute 22 was a Soviet Union-located organization founded by the Academy of Sciences and the Ministry of Defense. Its main goal was to investigate UAP sightings that were reported in the Soviet Union. It was a top-secret, government-backed program that ran for 13 years until the Soviet Union was abolished. Soldiers, sailors, and pilots of the Soviet Army were directed to focus efforts on spotting UAP and other unexplained phenomena. Since Since the program was supported by the Ministry of Defense, the lack of information provided was never questioned. The government and soldiers were happy to keep a keen eye on the sky. That was a good rhyme. Oh my god. The Institute studied, investigated, and filed over 3,000 reports. They were able to find certain explanations for 90 to 95% of the reports, but 5 to 10% remained unsolved when the Institute was dissolved alongside the Soviet Union. Conspiracies and speculations surrounding Institute 22 are abundant. The most popular theory assumes that Institute 22 was actually a cover-up for nuclear weapons. People believed that the Institute was involved in covering the near launch of a missile located at a Soviet nuclear base. In 1982, one of the Soviets' nuclear bases was mysteriously brought online, and for seemingly no reason, a nuclear missile was prepped and set to launch. The panic lasted less than a minute before the launch was suddenly disconnected and aborted, just as mysteriously as it was engaged. Later on, it was discovered that witnesses had seen UAP activity near the Soviet base, and Institute 22 was involved to assist with the situation, and eventually, the cover-up. The Soviet Union released a statement that explained the UAP as flares being tested at a high altitude, and that the nuclear missile that was brought online was just a simple test. People weren't any happier with the explanation. In fact, it was still as terrifying as UAP. Like, I'm sorry, you were just checking if a military-grade, city-leveling explosive was able to turn off. So you did this test not knowing if the missile was able to be taken offline after being engaged. Girl, yeah. I'd be more scared of that too. Number 2, Project Condign. Project Condign was a secret UAP study led by the Defense Intelligence Staff of the British government. Condign was only present for 3 years, from 1997 to 2000. That's very short, so let's delve into why the project failed so aggressively and so quickly. Project Condign studied over 10,000 sightings and reports that were collected by the section of the Directorate of Scientific and Technical Intelligence, which is a program within the Defense Intelligence Staff. With the information collected, Project Condign created a 400-page document named Unidentified Aerial Phenomena in the UK Air Defence Region. Okay, I feel like that's not a very creative title. Direct, but it sounds like a book that would go directly into the pile of books I convinced myself I'm going to read, but will definitely end up getting utilized as a disposable coaster or napkins. The report laid out the entirety of Project Condign's research, hypotheses, and overall conclusions. It concluded that UAP were an indisputable presence, but that no evidence supported the idea of them being hostile, dangerous, or threatening to the safety of citizens. The majority of UAP sightings that were analyzed and explained by Project Condign were labeled as misidentifications of common objects, while the unsolved reports were likely the result of unknown supernormal astronomical phenomena that is not yet understood by modern science. That's dumb, and I could have concluded that, and I don't even have my high school diploma. Isn't the point of a research to find answers? Like, yeah, you're right. The strange floating light that randomly appeared could be a space rock, but it could also not be. Isn't the point of founding a phenomena identification study identifying and classifying phenomena? It's not just saying, oh, yeah, after intense research and thousands of tax dollars worth of resources, I've come to the revolutionary conclusion that what was spotted is in fact, without a doubt, something that I can't identify. Okay, sorry, I'm distractible. Some of the scientists actually did decide to put their thinking caps on and were able to begin the classification of a strange astral phenomenon, referred to as buoyant plasma formation, which is apparently similar to a lightning ball. The electromagnetic fields generated by plasma are assumed to explain reports of close encounters because of perceptual alterations or illusions. The report suggests that further research into the phenomena should be implemented. I thought that was your job. No. Sorry, I actually already explained how clearly it's not. The report continues to talk about how their research figured out nothing about the plasma phenomena, but notes that former Soviet Union scientists identified a close connection between the phenomena and plasma technologies, and they were pursuing related techniques for potential military purposes. I find it so funny that no one even knew what the phenomena was, but in a beautifully inept display of human nature, they went, I wonder how we could hurt people with that. Number 1, Project Sign and Grudge. Project Sign was an official government-backed and funded US study of UAP, led by the United States Air Force, and was active for under 12 months in 1948. The project was founded by General Nathan Farragut Twining, head of the Air Technical Service Command. The objective objective of the project was to collect, evaluate, and inform the government of all UAP-related sightings, hoping to identify any UAP that were a national concern. The project was dissolved quickly, not even reaching a new calendar year. After the dissolution of Project Sign, Edward J. Ruppelt, Project Blue Book's director, supposedly said that Project Sign had created an estimate of the overall situation, which supported an interplanetary explanation for UAP, and that the chief staff of the Air Forces shut down Project Sign for lack of proof. However, there is no proof that Ruppelt ever made these claims, and many have called the apparent quote more mythological than real. But the same year, the US Air Force released a paper which stated that although some UAP resembled actual aircrafts, there was not enough data to soundly determine their origin. Nearly all reports were explained as originating from ordinary cases, but they did suggest further research into the investigation and classifications of sightings. The curiosity and support from the government to conduct more research, combined with the fear of UAP being exploited by a foreign power, resulted in the establishment of Project Grudge. Since it was post-World War II, panic and stress in government and citizens was high, so manipulating a population into a terrified mob was pretty easy. But in the same political vein, Project Grudge was urged to release a public report containing 4 explanations and classifications for UAP sightings. So, because politics is above everything, Project Grudge fabricated a statement alerting citizens of the 4 UAP sighting explanations. UAP reports could be explained as misidentifications of various conventional objects, mass hysteria and warners, individuals who fabricated reports as a host or to seek publicity, or a psychopathological person. I will say, it sucks when science is halted by politics, because it leads to research being placed second to public opinions or outrage from people who don't even understand the research. Governments will create giant cover-ups and secrets to ease the public's panic, but I think that there's a method they haven't tried yet. Literally just telling the truth and being transparent. And some people will say, oh my god, no, because everyone will panic if you tell them the truth. No, I really don't think people will, because when left in the dark, people actually make up theories that are far scarier than reality. And if the truth is actually that bad, then people should know. So yeah, maybe I'm just not a fan of the government. No, actually no, I'm not. I vote for anarchy, honestly.
Number 5, Italian Observatory. So back in 2007, astronomer Alberto Mayer, living in Busto Aresizio, I think I got that right, over in Italy, made an incredible discovery, almost completely by accident, which, hey, that's how most scientific progress gets made. Or maybe just me. He was adjusting the focus of his telescope when he spotted and tracked a UFO as it flew across the surface of the moon. Now the video shows the portions of the moon that he was focused on in close-up mode, while tracking a solid black object as it flew over the surface. Now sure, I could just describe what is going on in this video, but I could also let you see it and decide for yourselves, which makes a lot more sense in my brain. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, so here's roughly, here are the 24,000 words worth of content if my math makes sense, which is about a 50-50 chance. Take a look! Pretty weird, eh? So the round black object is tracked as he catches, it just after it passes the Wallace crater, and today this is how I'm learning parts of the moon were named. It hovers and hesitates before making a sudden change of path at an exact 45-degree angle. The precision and control is what gives people pause, since it seems to move as if it's being controlled, and with such mechanical dominance that it seems like it has to be something being intentionally driven, not just a strange rock floating throughout the stars. Commenters on the video pointed out that the object doesn't decrease in size at all, suggesting that the object isn't that close to the moon, and rules out the theory that this is a shadow on the surface of the moon from a large object. Now look, I'm one girl, I'm only capable of so much. The science stuff, kind of outside of my range of expertise, but I can confirm and offer my, speculation on UFO videos. And this is something. To quote one of my favorite phrases at the moment, I suppose, to be determined. Number 4, the footage the Pentagon refuses to release from Alaska. So between February 4th to the 12th, earlier this year, 4 different unidentified objects were forcibly taken down from the skies over Alaska, South Carolina, the Yukon, and the Great Lakes. While cockpit audio from F-16 pilots who, took down the UFO over Lake Huron was released, a spokesman for the Pentagon has confirmed that footage will not be released in the near future, being quoted directly as saying, "I can tell you that there is not currently any images or video footage that we can release. The imagery remains classified and I have not received any information as to the potential timeline on a change in classification." So usual government speak. This refusal is a drastic difference in comparison to the quick release of an Air Force photo of what was believed to be a Chinese spy balloon that was brought down at the same time over on the East Coast, and footage from where a Russian plane appeared to intentionally collide with a drone last March. Noted UFO researcher John Greenwald requested the footage and photos of the UFO, takedowns be released via a Freedom of Information Act, with the Pentagon claiming national security exemptions to deny this request. Because, that's not scary at all. An Air Force official said that the images would reveal cryptology and national security concerns if released. And even the, Canadian RCMP are playing coy, having ended their public search for the remains. Now look, I don't know about you folks at home, but that sounds pretty dang suspicious to me, and I think I know what I'm talking about at this point. So does anybody want to take a random trip to the Yukon just to sightsee? You know, totally not to recover UFO debris or anything suspicious? I'll start the car. I got room for a couple of us. I drive a nice big SUV. Number 3, the Guy Hotel Memo. So it's the most requested document in the FBI's archives, right after the photo of Elvis and Nixon riding with an alien. I wish I could make this stuff up, but the file has been checked out roughly 1 million times in the last 2 years alone. So as far as cagey cover-ups go, this one's fairly out in the open, but that doesn't make it any less invigorating or confounding. It's a single page, an unconfirmed report that the FBI never even followed up on. The file in question? So it's a memo dated back to March of 1950, authored by one Guy Hotel, who served as the director of the FBI field office in Washington, D.C., addressed to FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover. I know you all know that name. So in the memo, Guy was relaying a story seen by an Air Force pilot about something bizarre they had seen in New Mexico. And this was right around the time of Roswell fever. The memo describes flying saucers, circular in shape with raised centers, approximately 50 feet in diameter. It goes on to say that inside each saucer was a flight crew, each occupied by 3 bodies of roughly human shape, but only 3 feet tall, and bandaged in a manner similar to blackout suits used by speed flyers and test pilots. The memo goes on to claim that the crafts were found because an aircraft radar had interfered with the controlling mechanisms of the saucer, and concludes by saying, no further evaluation was ever attempted. I don't know about you, but it seems like this should be a significantly bigger deal than that. No further evaluation? Oh, that's fine. Somebody in the Air Force claims they saw a series of flying saucers piloted by tiny men in shiny spacesuits, not even 3 years after the Roswell incident, kind of took over New Mexico. But hey, it's nothing. At least I guess there's some comfort in knowing that the government has always behaved like this when it comes to investigating and reporting on possible UAP and UFO sightings. I believe it's worth mentioning that Project Blue Book was launched not even 2 years later, investigating UFO sightings in the Air Force. So once again, giving the government my usual dose of side-eye and yo, what the heck? Number 2, Ryan Graves' report. So Ryan Graves is a studied Air Force pilot, an FA-18 Super Hornet pilot specifically, who has flown the skies for 10 years and has seen countless UFOs in his time flying for the Navy, seen a lot of things he can't explain. He has recently spoke out saying these things would be out there all day. Keeping an aircraft in the air requires a significant amount of, the speeds that we have observed. 12 hours in the air is about 11 hours longer than we'd expect. On one particular incident, back in late 2014, a Super Hornet pilot nearly crashed into one of these unknown objects. Some of these objects were caught on plane camera, and so, because it's me, we have some of that footage for you today. The pilot and his wingman were flying in tandem about 100 feet apart over the Atlantic East when something flew between them. Now, Lieutenant Graves said that the object looked like a sphere encasing a cube. The pilots were concerned because they were, a covert drone program, and government officials wouldn't have had them flying around fighter jets for fear of collision. It was this that had the Navy concerned that perhaps there was more to investigate with this particular encounter. But what was truly unsettling the pilots, besides the fact that there was an intense possible safety crash, was that these crafts were accelerating to hypersonic speeds, stopping and turning on a dime, which is not really something that human pilots are capable of. So what did the pilots think they were dealing with? Graves did speak out saying, we have helicopters that can hover. We have an aircraft that can fly at 30,000 feet and right at the surface. But combine all that in one vehicle of the some type with no jet engine, no exhaust plume? That's not possible. So what do we think, folks? This seems like something worth digging into, right? Suspicious? Hands up. Who's with me? I knew y'all would. Number 1, the 2004 series of spottings. So on November 14th of 2004, Lieutenant Alex Dietrich was piloting her FA-18 Super Hornet. Yep, that's a very popular plane, when she observed an oblong shape hovering over the water. It leapt into motion, skimming 500 to 1,000 feet over the waves at around 500 knots. And for those of us Canucks, that's around 925 kilometers per hour, which is faster than I can get my vehicle. I like to get it to 120 and that's it. The fighter jet's onboard radar couldn't detect the object, but Alex's weapon systems operator in the receipt, whose name isn't public for safety reasons, witnessed it as well. Now, Alex quoted her recollection as, we were trying to call out what we were seeing to each other, and to make sure everybody else is seeing it. It's moving so erratically and so fast that our voices, our minds, and that our radio calls can't even keep up with it. Now look, the majority of credible modern-day UFO sightings can be credited to those that work in the Air Force, and it should be noted that military pilots are trained at what they call REAS, short for, reconnaissance. Every time I say it, somebody corrects me in the comments, so I'm not even going to try this time. And referring more specifically in this case to the art of recognizing aircrafts by their shapes, paint schemes, unit insignia, and more. On one of the other Super Hornets that launched was Lieutenant Commander Chad Underwood, who was able to capture the object on an infrared camera. It was about 40 feet long, round and smooth, and quickly received the nickname Tic Tac. Yep, you guessed it, this is my favorite UFO story. Now, all of the footage that the US government has confirmed as authentic and, unexplained speak for itself, since I know we have the clip handy. And around this time, starting on November 10th to be exact, Gary Voorhees, a petty officer on the USS Princeton guided missile cruiser, had been reporting apparitions on his radar screens in the same area. Triple checking his equipment before he made his report, and being the main technician responsible for said equipment, along with having 6 years of Navy experience at the time, he described what he was seeing as impossible, and just seconds, an object had dropped to the waterline from 60,000 feet, hovered, and then zipped away at high velocity, making right-angle turns that were quoted as being confounding and defying gravity. Hey, relax, Wicked fans, I'm right here with you. The objects returned for the next week, with Voorhees quoted as saying, "I was able to see it on the horizon, during the night and during the day, and it was definitely a glowing object. Could I tell you for 100% certainty what exactly it was we were tracking? Nope." Now, footage of this event used to exist, with Gehring being able to vividly describe his memories, but has since been completely scrubbed from the internet. So, hey NASA, wanna, pipe up?